We'll see if you pop up here on my screen. But basically, I think we're live.
Okay.
I am going to let Ruth Godwin take over. She is going to talk about a certain phonics reading technique. She's going to do most of her own introductions, so we'll let Ruth take over.
Hi, everyone. I am Ruth Godwin, and tonight we are talking about Orton Gillingham. And this is going to be a very quick overview of what Orton Gillingham can be for phonics for all of our readers. Like Kristen said, my name is Ruth Godwin. Here we go. All right, this is just kind of a Wordle, which is kind of fun to do and really just shows you that Orton Gillingham is reading, phonics, drill, fast-paced, sounds blending, works a lot on fluency. Orton Gillingham is a great methodology. So questions. If you have questions, please put them into the chat of the Facebook Live and I will be monitoring those so I can make sure and answer your questions. If we don't get to your questions or if I need time to look into the answer for your questions, I will continue monitoring the chat and make sure to answer those questions when I can. Hopefully almost all the questions will get answered today. All right, here's just a little bit about me. I am a mom and a wife. I am a mom to a 10-year-old daughter. Her name is Leith. You can see her there with her Minnie Mouse ears on. And I also have 2 cats that I'm cat mom to. And I am a wife to my husband, Josh, and we've been married for almost 11 years. I have started my 6th year of teaching 1st grade at University Academy. We are a local charter school in Kansas City. I earned my bachelor's degree from UMKC in 2015, my master's degree in librarian studies from UCM just this past summer. I actually officially graduated in July of 2020. I am a lover of reading, swimming, and camping. I love to read mysteries that aren't too scary, and I love reading YA fiction. So I always read the award list of YA fiction. I am a avid camper. Our actual last camping trip happened this past weekend. We went to Bennett Springs State Park and camped. It was fabulous camping weather. And I learned the IMSE Orton Gillingham system in December 2018. IMSE is a company that has modified Orton Gillingham just a little bit, and that is the training I went to. There are several other trainings, but that's really the only one I can speak to. It was 5 days of really intense learning about reading and learning about phonics. And so it is totally, this is just a very small bit that we're going to talk about tonight. So Orton Gillingham, what is it? It is a phonics strategy designed to help all readers. It was initially designed to help dyslexic readers and was designed and published in 1935 by Dr. Samuel Orton and Dr. Anna Gillingham. They published it. And it is an intense, fast-paced, daily 30-minute lesson. Ideally, it's daily. You can do it smaller based on your group size and what your students need. It's a strategy based on developmentally appropriate phonics sounds and skills. So when we talk about the alphabet and we say A, B, C, D, the alphabetical order, that is not the developmentally appropriate way to teach the phonics. In English, we have the letter names, the letter sounds, and the letter written form. And they're all different, and we all use the different words, but developmentally, we should be teaching it in a different way than the alphabetical order. The whole brain connection is huge. We do a lot of call and response, textures, and repetition. Repetition is always important in teaching. We all know that. It helps our students, it helps our children, it even helps us as learners. What it is not a curriculum. It is a strategy. And the thing I love about Orton Gillingham is I can implement these strategies and this system of learning phonics into any curriculum. Any curriculum I'm given, I can add pieces into with Orton Gillingham. It's also not a critical thinking activity. So as teachers, we're always wanting to add in critical thinking pieces. We always want to make sure that our students are thinking beyond just what we're telling them, right? But for phonics, we really want it to become more of a rote system where they can see the sound, say the sound that it makes, not really thorough thinking. As it gets deeper and higher level through Orton Gillingham, there is more critical thinking, but at the beginning, it's not. So how are the Orton Gillingham lessons taught? Whole group is what I do, up to 30 students. It's not a big deal to add 30 students in doing the exact same thing because it is very call and response. It's very predictable for the students. There's not a question of what's coming next. It's the same every single time. I also use it small group in my guided reading class. You can do it as a tutoring group, or if your student is having one-on-one tutoring, Orton Gillingham strategies work really well. I feel like I'm talking really fast. So please, if you have questions, remember just to type them into the comment section of the Facebook Live so that I can answer those. All right, we'll keep going. Strategies used by IMSEs, Orton Gillingham, might be different from other organizations who use Orton Gillingham. So like I said, this is the academically appropriate order of sounds. We start with COAD. Like I said, it's different than the alphabetical order. The sound cards and blending board we use, red words are taught for tricky words and those that cause repeated troubles. So if your student is having a really hard time with a word, you can use the red word strategy. The weekly dictation, which is what I have a video of, we'll watch in just a second. Phonemic games, phonological awareness using stories and songs, vowel intensive activities, we use little vowel cards. And I have all these different little cards we use. That's just to help be that crossing our brain stems, making sure we're using cross-body things and more of our whole body, more kinesthetic learning. So we create lots of bridges, but before we talk about bridges, I want to show you this video. This is the dictation I used from my spring lessons when we first went virtual. So we're learning the OEOA.
Hello, everybody. We are back and ready for our dictation. We are learning the OA and OE spelling this week. So you need to have this page either printed or a page in your journal open and a pencil when you're ready.
Okay, Kristen, I just want to check that you can hear my sound. You can just give me a thumb or...
Yes.
Awesome, great. Then we'll keep going with the video.
Okay, push the play button. Word number 1 has 3 sound lines. Listen carefully. Aloe. Aloe. Number 2, toe. Toe. My big toe hurts. Toe. Number 3, doe. Doe. A doe is a young female deer.
Okay, so what you're hearing here on this is that we have 3 sound lines for the first aloe word. So we would sound out our word using these 3 sound lines. And then we would rewrite it like we see it in a book. And then we had toe. There's 2 sounds in the word toe. There's 3 letters, but there's only 2 sounds. So we have our 2 sounds. Okay, so that's a little bit of the dictation. The video there is about 4 minutes long. In class, it takes closer to about 10 minutes to do the whole thing, but virtually, obviously, things are different. All right, let's keep talking about these bridges. So the image you're seeing here is an image that I found and have added those bright colors to it. And those are my visualization of bridges. Okay, so I talk a lot about making bridges through connections. So we're connecting the different spaces in our brain that language exists. Language memories are needed when you attempt to make the sounds into recognizable words. So we know the word phone is spelled P-H-O-N-E. The P-H says f, like in the word farm. It's an F sound, but it's written as a PH. And because we've learned that rule and we are talking and we are reading that sound a lot, we already have that bridge. However, before students learn that PH says f, they might read it as p, ah, eh. Okay, so it sounds totally wrong. Sometimes it even comes out to on, which is not a word, but they say that because they're trying to use their strategies. They don't have the PH says bridge yet. So the adult brain, pardon me, has many bridges or memories already made by those language experiences. In contrast, look at this child's brain description that I'm showing you, just to show that there are very few bridges here in this child's brain in comparison to the adult brain. So using Orton Gillingham's cross-body and multisensory experiences, we build connections. Those connections are built through bumpy texture tracing, sandpaper letter writing, pounding and tapping our words, or arm tapping our read words. There are many different parts of the Orton Gillingham strategy that we use to connect brain parts across all of our language, across all of the language parts of your brain. Pardon me, my mouth got all twisted up. So this is why the students need that very explicit language and phonics teaching that Orton Gillingham gives us. So who does it work for? This system can work for absolutely everybody. This system I've had work with identified special needs students, struggling readers, advanced readers, identified ADHD students, typical readers, dyslexic readers, college students. I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you about Orton Gillingham, but I very seriously used the Orton Gillingham strategies during my master's work. So everyone can use this strategy. All right, let's talk just a little bit about what the week might look like for your student utilizing Orton Gillingham. Monday is a new sound. Tuesday, new sound used in the dictation like we just saw the video for. Wednesday, we learn our red word. Red word is really important. We use the red because it's like a stop sign. If you can hear the train in my background, sorry. Thursday, we have our practice spelling test, which is going to include the new sound words and the red words. But our new sound by Thursday is not really a new sound anymore. We've gotten used to it. We've practiced it many different ways and times. On Friday, we have the real spelling test. The lesson is organized so that it is fast flowing, explicit instruction. So here's the organization of a typical phonics lesson. We do our sound cards, our blending board, our vowel intensive activity, and then our daily lesson like we just talked about on the last slide. Is it Monday and we're learning a brand new sound? Is it Thursday and we have our practice spelling test? This is where that piece goes. And then we have our fluency practice where we're trying to learn how to read like we talk. We don't want to read like a robot. We don't want to read like we're trying to sound out every sound. We want our students to learn to read so that it sounds fluent. Phrasing, expression, following the rules and the written language the way the author has intended it to be written. Is it a question and you end with a higher note in your voice? Is it a scary thing written with an exclamation point? As a fluent reader, you can do that. So remember, this is very explicit instruction. So the sound cards, we go through those cards really fast, 5 minutes. Blending board, put it all together in about 5 minutes. The vowel activity, if you're doing the vowel activity that day, is 5 minutes. And not every day would we do the vowels. I said that we do the vowels 2 to 3 times a week. If we came back from a break, we're going to do it every single day for the next couple of weeks. If we've been doing it and the kids are picking up on these vowels and it's easy peasy, we're not going to do it every day. Depends on where they are. All right, so here's where I'm going to talk about some specific strategies. So if you're having questions yet, make sure you're putting them in the chat. so that we can get them up and I can answer those questions. And I want to show you this. So our sound cards are shown one at a time. I'm going to hold the cards and I'm going to flip them for my students, one card at a time. They see the sound, they say the sound, I switch it. And then we put them on a board and we practice blending and decoding as a whole group. Let's try a couple syllables and sounds. Here we go. When you see the sound, you're going to say the sound. So this would sound like this. I, because remember, I has two sounds. We will learn that there is a closed syllable sound, I, and an open syllable sound, I. And we also have hand gestures that, again, make it more kinesthetic learning. So we will say, I, and I open the gate for the open syllable. Ah, oh. Now remember, TH has two sounds. So my students will say, because you can feel it vibrate right here in your voice box. Now, P is a very important sound that I want to talk about for a second, because oftentimes when we're teaching our students, our kids when they're little, and we talk about the P or B or D, we might say P, D. And those aren't the sounds. We want to say short sounds like P, 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 and D, 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 not D, because that is going to confuse them when they're trying to spell. All right, now let's put them on a blending board and we're going to follow the little car that you see. So where the car is what you're going to say. So here we have sh, I, b. Now we're going to see the car go all the way across and we're going to blend the whole word together. Shib. It didn't go. There it goes. So we have shib, not a real word. Doesn't matter on the blending word. The purpose of the blending board is that we are putting sounds together and blending them together. We always talk about how a syllable has a vowel sound. This has a vowel sound. I see my vowel sound is a bright yellow card, and that is important. So there's our silly syllable shib. All right, so now we're going to talk about a different specific strategy. This is what we call red words. And I said we use the red because it indicates to stop. It doesn't make any sense for our phonics. We haven't learned all those rules, or maybe it's just a word that doesn't follow rules. It's a red word. So we use this for tricky words, phonemic rule breakers, such as some of our words that come from different languages that we just kind of use in English, and our high frequency words that students need to learn. My students have learned several red words, and we're going to have some materials that they need to have. They need to have their red crayon, a regular pencil, their red word paper, and a plastic screen. So this is what the red word paper, let me open to a blank page. The red word paper looks like. You can see here that it has my house and the big line with the dot in the middle. Red word paper is great. On the back side of our red word paper, it has multiple lines and a space to write a sentence. Okay, so the plastic screen I'm talking about is this. You can find this at any craft store. It will be in the thread and yarn kind of thing, kind of needle art, and it's bumpy. The texture's bumpy. So when we write on it, it makes their words able to have a texture. So if you can see my word and, where my letters are, the crayon is raised. So I'm creating that multisensory experience with a tricky word that my little first graders didn't know yet. And we are making sure that they could remember it using many bridges that we're building. So the steps for the red words, there's 9 steps. And it'll take me longer to read these steps to you than it takes to actually do it. Write the word with your red crayon over your bumpy sheet. So over your plastic, okay? Trace the word 3 times with your finger. You're gonna trace it. You're gonna say A-N-D, trace it. And then put your plastic screen on top of your crayon, and you can still see it because it's got those holes in it. Trace it again. Then you're going to stand up, hold your ball, and tap each letter on your arm. So if I'm holding a ball, now I'm going to take my writing finger and tap my word. A-N-D. Blend. We say and. So it looks like A-N-D. And. Right? And then we're going to sit back down. So we've already made many connections. We connected with our bumpy letters. We connected with the tracing over the bumpy. We connected by putting our whole body involved, standing up, moving our blood around. Now, when we sit back down, we're going to trace it 3 more times. The magic of 3. And then they're going to cover up their word and flip the paper, pick up their pencil, write it from memory. At this point, you want them to write it by themselves. They've already traced it 9 times. They have tapped it on their arm. They should know these letters, okay? And we write it 3 times, check for spelling and correct formation of the letters, and then write it using a sentence. So looking at my and paper again, you see A-N-D with the bumpy. I flipped it over. Now I used a marker because I was doing this on my computer, but I would have my students use a pencil. They wrote it 3 times, wrote a sentence. The sentence, the only word I'm worried about being spelled correctly is the red word. Other than that, let them sound it out the best they can. Write the red word correct. All right, there's a video, but it tells you just what I did. So we're going to skip it. All right, the next specific strategy is to pound and tap words. We are going to bring more bridges by adding extra pieces and using both sides of our body. You're going to hold your pencil with whatever hand you write with, left hand or right hand. I happen to be left-handed. And with the other hand, you're going to make a fist. If you have a piece of paper handy, this would be a great time just to try this. So if you grab a piece of paper and your pencil, let's try 2 words. We're going to hold our pencil and tap with our non-dominant hand. When we pound our word, we're pounding syllables. So we used to learn how to do syllables by clapping. And that's awesome because that really brings in more of your kinesthetic learning. But if you're trying to write right after you've used that clapping hand, you then have to stop, pick up your pencil. You're giving time for that thought to leave your brain. Okay, so if we have our pencil and we pound, we're not going to have that problem. Okay, so I hope everybody has their pencil ready. So we're going to try the word cat. Okay, so if I am trying to figure out how many syllables is in the word cat, I can pound that word, cat. Okay, so then I can tap my words. I can tap my sounds. Okay, so I have a question. It says, why is a word red as it occurs to be decodable? Great question. If a word is one that you haven't learned the phonetic spelling, then it will be red. So if I go back 1 slide, I believe, yes, this way we're looking at the same slide I'm answering the question for. If I have a word that I haven't learned the phonetic spelling of, for example, the word and, A-N-D, although the A and the D are part of that first set of sounds we learn, in is a lot later. So we might just need to learn that word so we can use it in writing. So you can use it for tricky words, phonemic rule breakers, or phonics you don't know yet, and high frequency words. For example, one of the words that first graders are supposed to know how to spell is the word first. First doesn't sound out correctly. That IR, when you have a first grader looking at it, they say f-I-R. That's not a word. That's definitely not what we're trying to make it read. So we would make that into a red word because until we learn the IR bossy R rule, we don't know that IR can say So we would make that a red word. So red words can be tricky words, phonemic rule breakers or high frequency words that you just need them to know right now. If I'm going to teach a unit on plants, they need to know how to spell the word plant. But we're not going to talk about L blends with the pool until the middle of the year. But I need them to know it right now. I can use that time to make it a red word and just move on. That way, when we get to the L blends and we learn that pool is spelled PL, they're going to say, oh, that's why it makes sense. Okay. So here we go. Let's try this cat. Got our pencil, got our pounding hand, cat. Cat is one syllable. Okay. So now we're going to use our fingers to tap sounds. So we're going to say k, a, t, and you're going to write it on your paper. If you can remember those 3 sounds and write them, awesome. That means you can just do it. If your student or your child has a hard time remembering those things, then we can do it one at a time. And you could say cat, k, write your C. Cat, k, a, write your A. I hope that makes sense, not having it on right here while I'm writing in my air here. So when you're doing the tapping and pounding of your words, you can sound out multiple syllable words. So I have down here hamster. Hamster is a 2-syllable word. I would pound this hamster. Okay, so when I pound ham, then I can say am, ham, and I would write H-A-M. The second syllable is stir, Now this is a word that would be much later in the 1st grade year, early 2nd grade year, later even, maybe in 3rd grade, depending on where your student starts, because that sound is a blend and ER says is pretty late when we're talking about phonics. So that is how we pound and tap words. And our next specific strategy is the multi-syllable words. So multiple syllable words are hard to break down. I'm thinking about if you are a parent in nursing school, or if your high schooler is taking biology and you're trying to break down some of those words, this would be super helpful to learn. One of the things I learned in my December training, that 5 days of training I did, was how to do this. And I kid you not, it made a huge difference in trying to sound out some of those academic words. So by the end of 2nd grade, Orton Gillingham, IMSE's Orton Gillingham says that we should teach 4 of the 7 syllable types. Okay, so I have them listed here, these first 4. The V stands for vowel, the C stands for consonant. And where you split that word makes it how you say that word. So if I'm trying to split up a word, where the inflection is for that word is very important. And I know that because of how syllables are divided. So here's a video from springtime when we are trying to decode a word. So we're going to decode the word toenail. And here is the video of how it's done.
Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Godwin, and it is time for us to decode a multiple syllable word. So I have my word here, and let's decode it so we can figure it out. Remember, our first step is to identify the vowels. So I-C-O-E. That's a vowel team we learned. And I-C-A-I, sneak peek. It's a vowel team we're learning next week. So there are our 2 vowels. And I'm, do that. Make our bridge. So now we have to decide, do we want to divide our word after the E or after the N? And when we learned O-E, we said O at the end. So now we know that's the end of our syllable. Divide right here. All right, let's try and read our word. T-O-E. O, toe. Okay, now let's try and read this side. If we have two vowels, remember they're walking vowels, and I'm going to say the first one's name. So we have N, A, L, nail, nail. And we have T, O, toe. So our word is toenail. Good job. When you see big words, remember, you know how to divide up syllables. And
Okay, so that's my video. You can see I was teaching at home. That was my 10-year-old walking through and teaching upside down writing. It works. So we learned how to break down that word. And for a first grader, toenail is a pretty big word. All right, here we go. I want to talk just a little bit about why traditional spelling is different from Orton Gillingham spelling. Okay, traditional spelling on a Monday, you're given the list of words from the teacher. You take it home, put it on the refrigerator, write it 20 times, right? You memorize those words. That's how we all learned how to spell. You take the test on Friday. On Saturday, if mom asks you to spell those words again, they're gone. You forgot them. You learn your spelling rules that only work sometimes. I before E except after C, right? Unless you're talking about all these other words that doesn't work for. And there's no working usage for your words that you've memorized and then put down on your paper. You just learned those words for the week. The difference is in Orton Gillingham, when we've made all those bridges, we don't give you a list because you're going to practice those sounds all week long. And I don't want to give you 10 words when that sound can be used in many, many, many words. So we work on it all week long. A working vocabulary is built with read words. We know how to read, write, and use those words in a sentence when we use our read words. You're building your vocabulary, okay? The last way that I want to just point out is that the spelling rules we learn with our phonics in Orton Gillingham are rules that always work, unless it's a name or a word coming from a different language. Okay, we're only talking about English phonetics here. Cat, kite is one of those rules. The letter C and the letter K both say K. However, the C also says S. So when I'm teaching this, and I taught this week with my first graders, so 3 weeks into school, my first graders have started learning this lesson. We draw a cat. Cat starts with a C. Other words that start with a C and have a hard K will have the O or the U vowel, like cut and caught. But words that have a hard C that have an I or an E, like kite or kin or the names Kim, that will have a K sound. Because if I have a CI word like city, that I makes our C say a S sound. So that word, that rule for phonics, the cat kite rule, is a rule that we go back to all the time in my phonics group. And we use that when we're reading. We use that when we're writing. It's something my students learn how to draw on their own, and they use that strategy a lot. That's a great rule to know. All right, so that's just a super fast snippet of Orton Gillingham and how it can be used in a classroom. There are ways to modify it for a one-on-one tutoring session. There are a lot of videos out there of people using it with students, with their own children, and can be really, really helpful. So this would be a great time if you have a question to type it in. And if there are questions later, I will check the Facebook live chat and see if there are any questions that I can answer. I hope that I didn't muddy the water, but I gave you some strategies that might help, specifically that red word strategy. It helps so much. And I just want to end my conversation here with this quote from a dear friend of mine. She passed this quote along to me. She says, it says, explicit teaching of alphabetic decoding skills is helpful to many children, harmful for none, and crucial for some. So remember that when we're teaching phonics and we're teaching spelling, it is absolutely crucial for some of our students, some of our struggling readers to learn these very explicit rules and this very multi-textured way of learning, building all of those bridges in their brain. All right, I will continue to check the chat and answer any questions that there might be.
Thank you very much for all of this.
You're welcome. I feel like I gave out a lot of information.
Yes, I have heard so much over the years about this method, but I really couldn't understand it. Parents just tell me that they can't explain it. So actually, there's one more question that just popped up. How do you choose which OG course to do?
I assume that question is speaking to, I said that I did the IMSE training. I didn't choose that one. My administration chose that one. So, and I don't even know the extent of all the ones that are out there. There's a bunch out there. And I will say that the training I went to was 5 full days, and I learned the system, and they break it down from lower elementary and then upper and beyond. And I only did the lower elementary part, and it was 5 full days. So if you get into an Orton Gillingham training that is really short, just remember how much information I gave you today. I would think that a longer training would give you more information and more helpful.
Very good. From a parent perspective, if someone's looking at taking their child to an independent person, how would you ask them the question of their training? Do you know that?
Yes, I can answer that question through IMSE. There are Orton Gillingham certified teachers. So I went through the class and have been trained. I have not done the practicum similar to a student teaching. You have to do a lot of lessons that are recorded, and you submit your lesson plans, and you go through a lot of information and submit a lot of paperwork. So there are like actual certifications you can receive for Orton Gillingham training. And that would be a question that I would ask if I was going to go to a specific tutor and I was interviewing that tutor. I would say, I've heard of the Orton Gillingham system. Can you tell me your level of certification? And that would be very helpful, because if it's somebody like me who has gone to training and teaches it, that level is much different than someone who has completed the practicum of it. I'm not nearly that qualified.
Very good. All right, I don't see any other questions here. I want to thank you for doing this. This has been very interesting to learn about the multisensory learning techniques, and it's just been very, very interesting to me.
Well, good. I appreciate it. When I learned about it and it was just eye-opening. I went to that training in December. And then we had 1 week before winter break, and I came back in January and started this. This was life-altering for the way I teach reading. It really changed so much for my readers. I had a struggling reader the first year I was doing this who was at a level D, which is like a beginning of first grade, in October, and also still in December. So he hadn't shown me very much growth. In January, we started this, and by May, when we did his final testing, he was a level I. So the system works. creating those bridges works so well. We always go to the zoo in May, late April, early May. And this student was in my group of students, and he decoded the scientific name for a cheetah because he knew how to break it down. And I was like, wow, I never even would have considered trying to break down the name of a cheetah. And it just blew me away that he retained those skills coming from a place of a struggling reader at the beginning of the year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One more question. How can you tell which activities work best to reinforce the skill?
Well, it depends on the skill. So if we're talking about vowels, the vowel teams work really well. So I have these vowel cards. Each letter has their own color and their own card. And we will work on vowels for a long time. We work on vowels all the way through first and second grade. Some kids are still getting confused at the end of second grade and need vowel intensive work all the way through third grade. You know, so if it's that, then these cards work really well. If it is blending, like with the slides for the car, really working on blending through that word, not saying sh, I, b, but shib, really going through over and over again. And if going back to vowels, if we're having vowel issues, a lot of my first grade students mix up the sound of the I and the E, the I and the eh. And we will have all of our blending words have those two vowels. I'll take all the other vowels out and we'll only do those. And we will practice blending those random words. If we're talking about consonants and really knowing those consonant sounds, that goes to how did you introduce that word? Did you take the time on Monday to really brainstorm a bunch of words that had those consonant sounds? And then on Tuesday, work slowly enough through the dictation that it made sense and really created that long-term bridge. I hope that made sense. But there's lots of different strategies out there, and really, as long as you can use the strategy in multiple ways. Like as a teacher, I will have students write it on their red word paper with their crayon and their bumpy screen, trace it on their arm. They can trace, and however they can build those multiple sensory connections will be more helpful to them. That's why with the red words, we do the bumpy, we do the tracing, we stand up and really build in that kinesthetic learning.
That actually, from a point of view of ADHD and how so many of those kids get distracted, do you find this is actually very helpful in a whole classroom setting, getting all these kids moving and tapping and doing things? Or do some of the kids get more distracted because somebody else is tapping or something?
I will say that in the individual lessons, because every lesson is the same. I showed the slide of the lesson breakdown where we do the sound cards, the blending board, the vowels, the new piece of the lesson, and then our fluency. Because it's so regimented of how it works, it flows really, really fast. And so what I have found is my students who have been identified with ADHD, they actually appreciate the fact that it is so consistent in how we're doing it. It's not a question of what happens next. We know what happens next because we've built in that repetition. We have built those every day, the same feeling over and over again, that as an adult can be mundane, but as students, they need that consistency, right? Especially our ADHD students, they need that consistency. And they do not, I've not found my ADHD students needing to move away, to get away from the sound if students are tapping out sounds or sounding out words. They seem to kind of just do it on their own and get in their own little groove.
Very good. That's awesome.
I think building in the whole body pieces of it really helps.
That's awesome. It makes me think of a video I once saw, I think towards the beginning of the pandemic, with kids in a circle in an Asian country of some place, I don't remember where, and they were having balls, and they would tap them and pass them in this big circle. And it was a learning method that helped reinforce something.
Oh my God.
I just found it like amazing to watch, because it was just so like they were all tapping at the same time and passing the ball, tapping and passing.
Oh, very rhythmic.
It was
That's
pretty cool.
awesome.
Just bringing all that movement in, I
Mhm.
think helps kids learn.
Yeah, they really become, they synchronize together. You know, my daughter does karate, and they synchronize their breathing. And I notice when we're doing, especially like our red words, the kids, they synchronize. You would think with 20 kids in a classroom spelling out the same word, you would hear in, everybody saying at a different speed, but we synchronize together, and they say it all together, and they read it all together, and it's not an echo per se. It's really just this one voice coming together. And that seems to help a lot with remembering how it's spelled throughout the week and beyond.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's kind of that, where they're in that same rhythm.
Maybe. So much to learn about learning.
Oh, for sure. The brain is a crazy, crazy, complex thing.
Yes. All right. I don't see any other comments. So
Okay.
thank you very much for joining us. And if I do hear any follow-up comments, or you can see the comments on the Facebook page, then certainly pop in and answer for us. That would be awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time, and I just love talking about this. So it was nice to get to share it on a different platform. So it's great.
Well, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.